Welcome to our podcast where we look for opportunities in our lives to see a beautiful view. I'm Candy.
And I'm Paul. We talk about joining us at our Beautiful View Patreon channel every week. And I know that from recent conversations with our friends, this needs a little more explanation.
Yeah.
Patreon really makes a big difference for content creators. It provides a practical way for you to show your appreciation for the content you love to watch or listen to.
And in return for your patronage, we'll send you a Beautiful View sticker. You'll get a shout out on the show. You'll receive an encouraging weekly newsletter. And from time to time, we provide our patrons with exclusive content.
Memberships are only $5 a month. When you join, you help us cover the costs involved in publishing these episodes. So please check it out. The link is in our show notes. We look forward to sharing with you today. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the beautiful view.
We could climb a mighty mountain, float on down a winding river, travel back in time and face our future too. Oh, I'm not scared of where I'm going, 'cause I know whose hands I'm holding. Oh, I'd go anywhere as long as you're going to. Well, I'd go anywhere as long as I'm with you.
It has been a lovely couple of weeks at our house, hasn't it?
It really has.
It's been all about love.
About love.
We had Valentine's Day.
Yep.
And Valentine's Day is always at our house. It's a family affair because it's like the week before our anniversary. So we always kind of do something special for the kids. So
Yeah, we really try and focus on the children.
yeah. So we, Tyler got out of school a couple of hours early on Valentine's Day, which was kind of fun.
Yep.
And then he went with his Boy Scout troop to go help set up the Luminary hike
Yep,
at
he
the
did.
state park. And then that evening, we actually, the four of us, went down and did the Luminary hike. And basically, they had lined the trails up to the butterfly garden and then kind of around the meadow trail.
The meadow
with,
trail, yeah.
little bags with, I guess, tea lights in them or
Yes.
something. Anyway,
Yeah.
so it was very sweet and very romantical. And just, anyway, we all had a lot of fun and nobody tripped and fell.
No, that was the main concern. I was like, if we go around here and there's like a hole somewhere, we can't.
No, you can't see.
You
It
can't
wasn't
see it.
that much
So,
light. So
No, but it was fine. The rangers
Yeah.
had been around beforehand to make sure that all the trip hazards were out of the way.
they did a really good job.
And it was a cool evening. Like the temperature was it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
but it wasn't too bad.
No, I wasn't cold, but
No.
I'm never cold. So
No, you're not.
anyway, it's been a great couple of weeks. So
Yes.
today's episode is called Love and Marriage.
Yes, it is.
I feel like we should sing the Married with Children theme song.
Love and marriage, love and marriage.
Okay, whoa. Okay, maybe not.
Sorry. You don't want to hear us sing. We're going to leave that to the professionals.
Yeah. So anyway, we
Yeah.
celebrated Valentine's Day. And about the time this podcast is released, we'll be celebrating our 22nd wedding anniversary.
22 years.
Yeah.
There really has been a lot of love in the air around here. And we just want to share a little bit of that love with you.
Yeah.
This should be fun.
It will be fun. So let's start from the beginning. If you know us at all, or you've been listening to our podcast for a while, you probably know that Paul and I met online back in the day of dial-up connections and MSN chat rooms.
Oh, thank goodness we don't have to deal with that anymore.
Exactly. We talked quite a bit about that in our very first episode, so we'll kind of fast forward a little bit. Let's start this story with our engagement.
Yes, let's pick it up from there. So we, how many times did you come across to England?
Twice. Yes.
And so what we had planned on doing was I was going to come back over to the States and I was going to do the gentlemanly thing of asking your dad for your hand in marriage.
Yeah.
Which Candy's dad is kind of intimidating. He is a big guy, and but I mean totally lovable. And So I was a little bit, nervous about it, I guess, but as it turned out, we couldn't go forward with that plan.
Right.
9/11 happened in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
And so flights were
they're canceled.
For a time. Yep. We didn't know when that was going to pick up again. Mm-hmm. And so what we decided in the end was...
we went ahead and started the immigration
process. We would just go ahead and start the whole immigration process, because the first part of our official relationship, because everything had to be official and documented, and which that was odd. But part of that was I had to apply for a 90-day fiancé visa. Mm-hmm. And so we started that process because it was going to take a time. Yeah. And at that point, we had decided that this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. So I ended up flying back over to England. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's when we ended up getting engaged. So instead of asking my dad in person,
I called him.
Yeah.
And so he was great. He made me feel comfortable on the phone. So it went very, very well. And he graciously said, "Well, son, I think that would be a good idea." And so anyway, we had the paperwork in process, and so at that point I couldn't fly into the States, even if I wanted to, because that would be with intent to stay. So that wasn't going to happen.
So, but we went and picked out rings.
We did pick out rings. You came over to England, and we picked out rings, and I had the whole thing planned. So that I had the special place that I wanted to take you to that I thought was very symbolic.
Yes.
And so we drove along a very narrow road that was right along the edge of the cliffs there on the North Devon coast. And we arrived at a place called Watersmeet. And Watersmeet...
Except you said it very differently back then.
Oh, Watersmeet. Yes. I didn't have my Texas drawl then.
No, you didn't.
So,
you were still proper back then.
I was still very British. So, so we went there. And basically, it's like two streams that flow down to the sea there. And they meet at this one point. And there's a little bridge there and a little hotel and all that kind of stuff.
And a waterfall.
So it was very romantical.
It was very romantical. I do remember, though, there was a lot of moss that we had to walk on to get there. I was so afraid I was going to bust my butt.
Yeah. So these are all north-facing cliffs and paths. And so, there was a lot of moss around.
But I didn't, thankfully.
No, you didn't. No. So we got to the spot and I knelt down and asked for your hand in marriage.
Yeah.
And it just... It was a beautiful moment. That seems like a long time ago now.
It was a long time ago.
You came back to the States and the wait began.
Yeah, so I basically arrived back home from that trip and I threw all the wedding details together in about 3 months. So
yes,
you had literally 90 days once your feet hit American soil.
From the moment my passport was stamped on the way in.
Yeah, so we had to, and at that point we didn't know exactly when that was going to be. We'd been told it could take months because it was after 9/11.
Yes.
So immigration was kind of wacky at that time. So we didn't know if it was going to be 3 months or if it was going to be a year or what was going to happen. So I just wanted to get everything ready. And I wanted a very simple, sweet wedding. So there wasn't a whole lot of prep.
No.
But, the flowers and picking a dress and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, and that really is a real thing, by the way, the 90-day fiancé thing.
I was waiting for my appointment to go to the U.S. Embassy in London to take my final interview. And then at that point, I would be free to come over. So we had 90 days and we didn't really know when that was going to start.
Right.
So it was interesting.
Yeah. So we just made our best guess because we wanted to get on the calendar. Like we had to plan and then we just planned to adjust if we had to. So we set our date for February 23rd of 2002. And you went through your interview and got approved and everything. So you flew over, you arrived from England with a couple of suitcases that included all of your earthly possessions, which is just crazy. In mid-January, before we got married in February. What was that like for you to move to a completely different country with almost literally just the shirt off your back to marry me?
Well, that part was good. That part was good. That was easy. I mean, I was going to do whatever it took to come over and be with you. We had several intervals of like a month, 2 months where we hadn't seen each other. And it was just hard. It was like crossing off every day, waiting until I could see you again. So that part was very, very easy. But practically, I think I loved the idea of the adventure. I love the idea of the fresh start and, the plane flights. What would I bring with me? Which I took far too much. I mean, I know you said just a couple of cases, but they were the largest cases you could carry on a plane.
And there were a lot of books. You brought a lot of books.
A lot of books that just sat on shelves in one house after another.
I wonder what the thinking was behind that. Did you want me to think you were really super smart? You were studious.
I was overcompensating for my lack of intelligence.
No, that's not true.
No, I don't know. It was one of those things where, I hadn't ever like moved very far in my life.
You'd never really, aside from your trip to the States, you'd never been out of England.
Never been outside of the south of England, which is an even
crazy.
smaller area.
Yeah.
And so, you just kind of get used to having your stuff around you. And it's like, I just couldn't bring myself to get rid of some of these things. And so I ended up struggling around the London subway with these huge cases, asking people to help me along the way so I could get from where my hotel was in the middle of Piccadilly Circus to the airport.
Right.
And that was, I put way too much stress upon myself. It could have been a lot easier. But no, I mean, landing in the U.S. And going through customs with my 90-day fiancé visa, which, of course, is just a little piece of paper stuck in your passport. So it's like, is this thing really going to work? I mean, is this all I need?
Yeah.
And so it was a huge relief to get the other side of customs, to see you. And to like be okay. So where are we at? Like, what do we have to do? Like, we're getting married. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and at that point, like that was mid-January, and we had just a little over a month before it was our wedding day was on the calendar at the church. So
yes,
it was very exciting. So our wedding day was an absolutely beautiful day. I mean, you think of a February wedding, and you think of it's going to be cold.
It could have been anything.
Oh my gosh, it was 83 degrees in San Angelo, Texas on that day. It could not have been more perfect. So
it was beautiful.
I was wearing my dream wedding dress, and I have to tell the story about that.
Yes,
so like every bride to be, I had been, trolling through magazine after magazine after magazine, looking at wedding dresses and I found this one dress in this magazine that would just be like, if I could have this dress, like it would be the perfect day, right? So I tear the page out of the magazine and I take that with me when I go looking, and I'm thinking I'm never going to find this dress, but something similar to it. I liked the neckline on it and everything, and the little cap sleeves, and anyway, all the things. So I take it into the bridal store. And I tell the lady behind the desk, this is kind of what I'm looking for, so that she can kind of point me in the right direction toward the dresses that are similar. She said, well, actually, we have that dress. And she said, let me go get it and see what size it is and everything. So she goes and gets it, brings it back, and it was that dress.
Wow.
So, and it was my size.
Yeah.
And then she says, we can... So I try it on, of course. It fits perfectly. And she says, okay, so if this is, do you want to try on any others? I'm like, nope, this is the dress. So she said, okay, so we can order you a new one. And it was going to be like $1,200 or something like that. Or you can rent this one for $250. And I'm like, that's what we're doing. So I rented my wedding dress, which I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
But it was perfect because I only needed it one day.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And one time. So
yeah.
Our wedding day, we were surrounded by our closest friends and family.
Yeah.
I was in my own little fairy tale world, marrying my British Prince Charming.
Oh, my gosh.
He rode in on his white horse.
No, if I rode in on a horse, the horse would have like taken off and tried to like get rid of me
Brush
on the nearest barn door. He tried to knock me off.
Oh my gosh. I was walking on cloud 9 for sure. And my parents even surprised us with a horse-drawn carriage ride after everything was over with. That was so sweet. And the weather was so perfect for it that day. It really felt like a fairy tale beginning to a very beautiful life together.
Aww.
It was really sweet. But you may have different recollections of that day. I think you were pretty nervous, actually. So what do you remember about our wedding day? I know there were a few threatening words from a couple of my well-meaning cousins.
For some reason, the West Texas sense of humor, I kind of really get. You know, like in England, you grow up and there's a lot of sarcasm there. And so it can be a little gritty in England as well.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of grit in West Texas. A lot more grit in West Texas than there is in England, for sure. So that was fine. For me, I was just like, you know, I'm waking up on my wedding day and I'm like, this is your wedding day. And so I had the suit hung up and ready to go. And so I was, you know, going through, okay, so I should just relax, remember to breathe, put the suit on, you know, like make myself look presentable. And then I'm just like, I have like, this is a wedding day, and this is a wedding day in the middle of West Texas. 5,000
it's 83
miles.
degrees in February.
5,000 miles away from everything that I knew.
Yeah.
And so I was excited.
Yeah.
But I was also just very focused on trying not to
pass out,
throw up, whatever. But I mean, I was really excited to get married to you, my sweet.
Aww. It really was such a beautiful day. I was walking on sunshine all day.
Yes.
All of my little girl dreams were coming true.
Oh.
So God really did indeed have the perfect man for me. He loved the Lord. He was my best friend. He was a great communicator. He treated me like a princess, so that took me a little getting used to. The theme for our wedding was, today I marry my best friend.
Yeah.
It was printed on our napkins and on our guest book. And that truly was our story. We were and still are best friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a huge component to our marriage.
With the unique way that we met, everything was based on conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were talking to each other from either side of the Atlantic Ocean.
Mm-hmm. You from little red telephone boxes.
Little red telephone boxes outside the job center in a little on a little narrow road that it was right opposite a bicycle shop, which don't get much more British than that. There's this little narrow lane, and I go there, and it would be cold, and I'd be feeding the telephone box, the telephone in the telephone box, and talking to you. And sometimes I picked that one because it was kind of away from everything. So if we talked with each other in the evening time, or my evening time, then there wouldn't be hardly anybody up there. Because if you got into one of the telephone boxes down at the quayside in Biddeford, where everybody was,
you'd have a line behind you.
They'd be knocking on the door. So I chose that one deliberately. Yeah. So that way we really could focus on learning about each other. And I was very intrigued by you. And it was just a case of like, I mean, first of all, the accent, right?
That worked both ways.
That was both ways.
Yeah.
Like I was totally taken up with your Texas drawl, your little Southern
Y'all.
your Southern girl thing going on, and just learning about your friends, people that I would, soon meet and become friends with too, and just a whole different way of life.
Yeah.
And so that was an important foundation for us. We really got to know each other very, very well.
Become best friends.
That
was crucial.
Very much so.
And I was just a baby when we got married. I was 23 and you were 30, you little cradle robber. We had a lot of important things in common, but we were also very different. And different enough so to be intriguing to each other.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like most newly married couples, we did have to learn to walk in step with each other. And also sometimes when to zig when the other zagged.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I was extremely independent.
Yep.
And I had trouble in the beginning letting you kind of help me with things. So I was a little hard-headed.
Yeah.
But what's something you remember about those early days of our marriage?
Well, I remember things being amusing. It was like, I'd come up against situations where you did want to be independent. And so I'm like, okay. So, so how can I break through here and be able to show love to you? There were some things that were easy to do. So like initially, it was cooking.
Yeah.
So I had my 3 or 4 recipes that I stuck to.
Very tasty recipes.
Yes, and so I could rotate those through, and so so that was really nice to be able to cook for you and for your friends, and so that was a good way for me to sort of kind of take charge a little bit.
Yeah, and even that was a struggle for me a little bit to
I know.
let you do that because I was so used to, I guess, taking care of myself and not really having anyone to take care of me. I was used to taking care of everyone else. So
Yeah.
So that was really different. I think all of this takes on a little different light as we're quickly approaching our oldest daughter, Vicky's wedding this summer.
Yes.
I start thinking back to all of the things that I wish I had known when we were very first married. We did a lot of talking before we got married, but there are probably a few things I wish I had known about love and marriage in the early days. I'll share some of mine in a minute, but what are some things you wish a young Paul would have known back then?
If I think about that, I would try and be gentle on myself. If I was to meet young Paul, I would be like, okay, you need to sit down. I would say that the thing that I would tell him is to relax. There are a lot of people rooting for you. If there are things that have not gone right, it happens to everybody. It doesn't have to all be perfect. Relax.
Right.
It's okay. People have got your back. And the way that you see things now is not as clear as it's going to be.
Right.
And you have to be okay with that. There are going to be a lot of bumps in the road down the way. Not necessarily bad,
Right.
but unexpected stuff.
Sure.
And then I think the biggest thing I would tell a young Englishman coming to West Texas is stop eating. When you pass the age of 30, it will have an effect.
It does have an effect. Yes. Yes, but there's so much food in Texas.
Well, when I first came to the States, I weighed, I don't know. I was like
nothing.
160 maybe.
Maybe on a good day.
160. And then there were all of the 12-ounce steaks, the dinner steaks, the Mexican food.
Mexican food.
and trying to keep up with my father-in-law.
Yeah,
which
you're never going to do that.
not going to happen. So yeah, I think those are some things that it's easy to see where you would do things differently with the benefit of hindsight.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But bless his little heart, he did the best he could.
Yeah, he did. He did good.
Yeah. How about you? What are some things that you wish you had known back then?
Well, I mean, as we said, we did a lot of talking before we got married and stuff. But there are some things I wish we had talked more about.
Yeah.
I think specifically having kids, raising kids. You obviously came to our relationship having been had a previous marriage, and you already had 2 kids.
Yes.
And I entered our marriage assuming that we would just have babies.
Yeah.
And we didn't ever really talk about like how many we wanted, whether you wanted more. I definitely wanted, and I think you knew I wanted children, but I just wish that we had kind of fleshed that out a little bit more, because that was definitely kind of a little area of contention, I think, once we kind of got into our marriage.
It was throughout our marriage. It was definitely a thing where we were trying to find a common ground on that. And so, yeah, I agree with you. It would have been better to be more honest about that at first.
Yeah. And I think I didn't understand or didn't kind of consider like, our different parenting styles, even like how once we had those kids, like your parenting style is kind of shaped from your upbringing a little bit.
It very much shaped from that.
So you take things that you appreciated from your upbringing and you incorporate that into your parenting, but you also take things that you're like, oh, I definitely want to do that different from my parents. And our kids will do the same. So my parents should not feel bad. They were amazing parents. But, our kids will do the same thing. They'll be like, oh, yeah, mom and dad did this. I'm never doing that with my kids. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But I wish we had talked about, kind of parenting styles and But gosh, when you're young and in love, you don't think about that stuff.
Well, and that was the thing there's 7 years between us. And at that point, 23 and 30, we're both still young.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And still trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
I think at the time, whenever the subject came up, I would push it off as a topic for another day. And that was where we should have stopped and said, okay, no, we need to talk about this seriously. So
I think that's good thoughts for someone who may be coming up on a wedding, to make sure you have those conversations.
Have those
beforehand.
conversations. Talk about it.
Another thing that I wish that we had known back then was just considering our different personality types and love languages and all of those kinds of things. I'm not even sure that like Enneagram numbers and love languages and all of those things were even a thing back then. At least I didn't know about them.
I mean, not as prevalent as they are today, for sure.
But I definitely wish we had asked more questions of each other. And I think a lot of times we tend to assume that if something makes us feel loved, then it has the same effect on other people as well.
Right.
And that's not completely true.
No, it isn't.
So, for example, my biggest love language, or the thing that makes me feel the most loved, is acts of service.
Yes.
Like if I take a love language quiz, acts of service is always my number one.
Yep.
So it absolutely warms my heart that you bring me coffee in bed in the morning. That is one of my favorite things. I feel seen and loved when you or one of the kids does the dishes for me or tidies up the house. My second biggest love language is quality time. When we go stretches without spending not just time, but quality time together, I just start feeling like I'm suffocating and like we're just completely disconnected.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is with all of that is that your top love languages are different from mine.
Yes. My top 2 love languages are physical touch and words of affirmation.
They are.
And so that is what I think that you want too.
Right.
And so, but once we figured this out, that our love languages were indeed different, I think a lot of things just made sense to us suddenly. It's like, so for me to bring you a cup of coffee in the morning, I feel like, well, it's not a big deal. I'm making my coffee anyway,
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily, it is an act of service for sure.
Yeah.
But to do it doesn't feel like that big of a deal to me.
Right.
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 But to you, it's like bells are ringing. There's like,
My Prince Charming.
But oh dear. But for me to lean into your love language, that generates the feeling of love that reciprocates between us, and so that's really nice to know. Yeah. So for me, at first I lent into what my two love languages are, and that doesn't necessarily match up with you.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And the most interesting thing about knowing these things is that, number one, it helps us understand ourselves better, and number two, it helps us understand and be able to show each other love in ways that make each other feel truly loved and treasured.
Yes.
So here's a good example of this. Let's say we go out for a date night, okay? I am going to feel the most loved, one, when you open doors for me or pull out my chair, those little acts of service, those little, in my little world of romantical things. I know that's not a word, but I love that word. That makes me feel the most loved.
Yes.
And number two, just because we're spending quality time together, I love that. That makes me feel loved and appreciated
when we're focused on each other.
Yeah. We're not talking about work. We're not talking about the kids.
Right.
We're talking about, because we're together most of the time. So, but that's, to me, I mean, though we're together, that's not really quality time. Quality time is where we're focused on each other. On the flip side of that, you are going to feel loved when, number one, I hold your hand, I touch your leg when we're sitting together, or I put my hand on your back, those physical touch things. And number two, when I tell you how nice it is to spend time with you and how handsome you look in your new shirt, those words of affirmation. I know it sounds silly, but it's absolutely true.
Yeah, it is. When in the middle of a natural...
Yes, maybe not on camera.
Camera, microphones, lights, no. Yeah.
No, but it is absolutely true.
Yes, it is.
Knowing these things about each other has really been life-changing in our marriage. It's not just about knowing your own love language, though, and trying to force others to speak that language.
Right.
It's more about knowing the love languages of your spouse and your kids and making an effort, even if those things aren't the things that fill our cup, to speak their language. Here's another example. Acts of service is my number one, but it is completely at the bottom of your list, which is really funny. But here's the deal. If I go around trying to serve you constantly, at best, you might say thank you.
Yeah.
But you might not even notice I'm running in circles around you trying to serve you.
Right.
So it's not that you don't appreciate it. I don't mean that. It just doesn't stand out to you as me showing you love. The same as you said for the coffee. That doesn't, to you, that seems like such a small thing.
Yeah.
But that's my love language. But if I come up behind you and surprise you with a hug when you're working at your desk or something, then that speaks your language, and you immediately feel loved and appreciated and reassured.
Yes.
And you just kind of lean into that.
Yeah. And the same goes the other way. I crave reassurance and words of affirmation. But if I'm constantly giving you words of affirmation, you get annoyed with me.
I do. Yeah. It drives me crazy. I just feel like actions speak louder than words in my books.
Yeah. Especially if I were to say, you're so perfect.
Oh, I can't stand that. That is one of my biggest pet peeves. And I am not perfect.
For me.
Yeah.
Perfect for me.
Oh, it drives me crazy. But don't you wish we knew all of this when we first got married?
Yes. It almost feels like this is a class that every couple should take going into marriage. It's like, let's figure out what each other's love languages are. Spell that out to me. What does that mean for you? I want you to tell me, hey, if you just bring me a cup of coffee in the morning, that's a great start.
I think in those early days, like, I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I think that like actually taking the quiz, you know, which is silly as it seems.
So helpful. Yeah.
It's really, really important because it kind of like puts things in perspective of things that you maybe know about yourself, but you don't necessarily know how to put in words.
Well, I guess because, you know, I mean, you're living with yourself, right? So these things are not significant. Not where you think you have to communicate that to someone else. It's not like you're thinking like, I need to make a manual about how I work.
How to love me.
And then I need to be able to hand that over to my future spouse. I mean, it's not like you do that, but these things are important. So, I mean, if you're out there, you are listening to this, take the time.
Yes,
Take the time to do this.
Absolutely. Another thing that we've discovered recently is Enneagram numbers. I know it sounds like a cult or something. Honestly, I was really leery of it because it sounds weird and a little hokey. But here's the deal. You should always be diligent in your research, use wisdom, and ultimately decide for yourself if going down that path is going to be helpful to you. If you find value in it and it improves your relationships, then use it. Just keep in mind that the Enneagram, like any other personality assessments, is simply a tool.
Yes.
But for us, it has really helped put into words the things that we were aware of about ourselves and each other.
Yes.
I think aside from knowing that God made each of us the way we are for our individual purposes and callings, like we talked about in our last episode, it's interesting to come to an understanding of our individual personality traits. It helps me to understand where you're coming from, and it helps you understand where I'm coming from.
Yes.
Both on our good days and our not so good days.
Yeah, I wouldn't put a lot of weight on this, like, you know, oh, you have to know your Enneagram. I mean, I know for me, just the very name just sounded like something really odd. But it really, really helped. And I think when we sat down together and read through each of our sort of like descriptions of our types, it was like, oh my goodness, I never knew that about you. And that totally explains why you react that way. And you're like, yes, that's exactly right. You know, so it was something where the information that we got rang true. It was like what we already knew, but it put words around it.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things for me was to learn that because there was a specific type that described me, I know that they didn't put it in this thing just for me.
Just for you.
So I know I'm not the only weirdo out there who matches this particular personality type. So that was very reassuring to know I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I'm not the only weirdo.
You are not a weirdo, and no, you're not the only one. We had a really fun chat around this when we were looking at it the other day.
Yes.
Let's share a little bit about what we learned about ourselves with this little exercise. What was your number, and what were some of the qualities?
Okay, so of all of the types, and you do this quiz, it's a long quiz, you know, and you can kind of see the way the quiz is working. Like the questions kind of keep leaning a certain direction depending on your answers.
And it's one of those that you answer with like,
what's more
agree, strongly agree, or, right? It's like kind of on that scale.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't matter, right in the middle,
so
it doesn't matter. Yeah.
I felt like it was a really good way to sort of assess where you come from.
Right.
So I am a type 4, which is titled the individualist. Surprise, surprise. And so basically what that means is I am very sensitive. I can be withdrawn. But being withdrawn, I can also be very expressive about that. So I can I want people to know that I'm, you know, this person on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
And so I can be dramatic.
Really? Well, let's go back to our 27 symptoms when we were sick.
Oh, gosh, no. I mean, I was doing that because some of the negative aspect, if you could call them negative, but some of the weird aspects about my personality, I find funny. So when I hear myself saying those things, I'm like, oh yeah, there you go again.
Oh, it was funny.
Yeah.
We were keeping count too. So,
so I can be self-absorbed and temperamental. And the great thing about the Enneagram test is that there is a path that you can track of yourself when you're under stress or when you're doing better. So you can kind of say, oh, I sense I'm going in this direction. Yeah, like these things are happening now. I'm starting to feel this way. So you can kind of gauge where you're at. So if I'm stressed, then I become over-involved, and I tend to be a little bit clingy. So I kind of get some insecurity, and so that doesn't go well for me.
Yeah.
But if I'm going in a positive direction, and in a direction of growth, then I become more objective and principled. So I can see that about myself. Like when I know that I'm doing well, I can see myself becoming very objective and principled, and like, this is the way it needs to be.
Yeah, you do.
And so what was your number?
Well, I am a 7, the enthusiast.
Yes, you are.
So according to the description, the enthusiast is the busy, fun-loving type, spontaneous, versatile, but distractible and a little scattered at times.
Yeah.
I would say that's true. Under stress, I can become perfectionistic and critical. And I do know that about myself. And that's one of those things that when that came, I was like, oh yeah, that is absolutely true.
Yep.
But when I'm in a growth mindset, when I'm on the up, so to say, I become more focused and completely fascinated by life.
And that's what's intriguing to me.
Yeah.
Because then I get fascinated by the things you're fascinated.
You know, I can just remember, like in our days of traveling, like I get so excited to go to new places. And I can remember times where we're just like traveling, just like driving down the road, we're towing our home behind us.
Yes.
Right. And I just get the giggles. Do you remember when I would do that?
Yeah.
Just like, I'm just in such disbelief that I get to do this. Like I'm completely just fascinated by life.
Yeah.
And every like national park or state park or any place that we got to go and explore.
You're excited about it.
Oh, I get so excited about it. It just really rings my bell.
And so when I come to you and say, you're so perfect, I am actually emphasizing a negative trait in your personality. And that was the thing that we like,
that was a light bulb.
Yeah, because you said that several times to me. Please don't say that. It makes things worse.
Yeah.
And I'm like, makes things worse. I don't really understand what you mean, because I feel like I'm giving you a compliment.
Right. But that's the perfectionism is one of my negative traits.
Yes.
The perfectionism and the criticalness. So if I'm under stress, I want the house perfectly clean.
You're going to clean house.
I want everything around me in its spot. I want everyone to behave perfectly.
Yeah.
I'm going to probably jump on you a little bit if you're not.
Yeah.
When I'm stressed, that's how I behave. So I know that about myself, and I know that that's a negative thing.
Yeah.
So when you say that I'm perfect, you're highlighting things that I know about myself that are not good.
And now I understand that.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it?
It really is. And there are a whole bunch of different things that you can do as a couple based on this information to learn about each other and to sort of start recognizing some of the things that you've already come across in your relationship multiple times.
Right.
And be like, oh, okay, now I understand.
Right.
I know why I shouldn't do that or shouldn't say that and what I can do.
Yeah.
So those are really important.
It's been super helpful to just kind of be aware.
Very interesting. I think that we're a prime example of how opposites attract.
I think that's true.
Yes.
To a point.
To a point,
though.
Yeah.
We definitely have some very different personalities, as we've just talked about.
Right.
But we also share a lot of similarities, too. Our number one thing that we have in common is our love for God.
Yeah.
That is always top. It comes before anything else. We share a lot of core values and life principles. We also have some common interests. I wouldn't say that we have a ton of interests in common.
Right.
But there are a lot of things that we do both enjoy together. So there are always things we can do together.
Right.
So let's see. What are some common interests that we share?
I would say, especially recently, creative stuff, like making content, taking photographs. So we've had the opportunity to work on different assignments together. And, you know, we really sort of like pick up where the other left off.
We complement each other really well.
Each other.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that you know what a good photograph looks like. I know what it takes to get the good photograph. And so we work together and in composition and setting something up to be photographed. You're the one. And then to actually like set the camera up, make sure everything is just perfect, the logistical things, the technical things,
lighting.
Then I'm the guy. But the thing is we both love the end result.
Oh,
like, oh my gosh, that's really cool.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
I think something else that we definitely have in common is like food and cooking.
Yes.
And that's always been the case. So, and what's really fun about that is we like to cook together.
Yes, we do.
But we also like to cook for each other too. So,
yeah, we do.
One or the other. So I think that's really interesting. We both love to camp, of course.
We do.
We both like working on projects, and you said a little bit about the photography and things, but I mean, most recently I bought a, it was like an old bookshelf that was kind of in not the best shape. It was okay. I got it for $20 on Facebook Marketplace.
It had potential.
I had a vision.
You did have a vision.
I had a vision, and I wanted it to be my new coffee bar.
Right.
And so with your help,
yes,
your DIY skills,
yes,
and my vision,
yes,
we have made this
cute
old bookshelf into a cute coffee bar.
Right.
I mean, it's really cute.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think those are some of the things that we share that kind of common interests that kind of coincide, and maybe we approach them slightly differently.
We definitely do.
That's because I think partially because of our personalities.
Well,
but
that's where we trust each other. Like, that's true. I know where you are much better in a certain area of whatever we're working on. And so I let you take the reins on that, and the other way around as well. It's a mutual trust, respect that we built up over the years.
I think we balance each other nicely.
We do. We do.
Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. And it's important to recognize those things in yourself and in your partner and figure out how to balance those things. For example, as you mentioned, you tend to be a little more introverted than I am. And I can be a homebody too, but I'm more of an extroverted introvert. I really love the socializing and stuff. Yeah. Now, after a lot of socializing, it may take me a few days to recover. Right. Like that always happens anytime we go to Texas because it's social for weeks on end. And then after we leave there, I need about 3 weeks to recover.
Yeah, like in a monastery or something.
In a forest.
Visiting with the trees. Monastery. Yeah. No, that's very true. And I think where your extroversion comes out is that you get enthusiastic about stuff.
I do.
Yeah. So you'll get really excited, and then everybody around you, like, they come to you like a magnet. Yeah. Like, oh, this girl is really excited about this. We got to hear this story.
I don't know what she's excited about. She's excited about something. But I think my need for social interactions, it challenges you to step out of your comfort zone sometimes too.
It does.
Would you say that?
Yeah, it does. There are times when I would choose just to stay home. And I would be fine with that, but that can get into an unhealthy place. And so because when you do that, you then start feeling lonely too. Yes, I do.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy or something.
Well, and it's kind of, it sounds ridiculous, but this is absolutely true. The walking into a space with a bunch of other people becomes more and more of a daunting thing to me. And so if I can just be like when I catch myself when I'm like, I guess I could go, you know, and then make the effort to go, then I feel better for next time. So if I can stay in that zone, I'm fine. But if I withdraw too much for too long,
it gets harder and harder to go back to.
It gets harder and harder to break that habit and to get back out and be with other people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
Another way that we're different is that I like to find the rules in any situation and stay within them.
Yeah.
And then I also like to remind you of them regularly because you are not necessarily a rule follower.
No, that sounds terrible. It sounds like I'm, up to nefarious activities all the time, but it's really not that way. It's just like, I want to not do anything like that's going to be an annoyance to someone else, or but at the same time I want to just dive in there and find out where those boundaries are.
Yeah there's that.
Yeah, so I'm more like, this is what I want to do. How can we get away with it?
Yeah.
For me, anything is possible. The sky's the limit. Like, you just gotta see this.
You're a visionary introvert.
A visionary introvert. For example, if we're at a concert, I'll find a way to sneak backstage, and I'm like, come on, let's go. And then I'll get back there and I'll stare at everybody awkwardly because I never thought past the point of actually getting backstage. Like, what am I going to do when I get there?
Yeah. Where I've already thought of all the possible consequences of you sneaking backstage, and I'm imagining the absolute worst case scenario. They're going to take you out in handcuffs and lock you away for the rest of your life. So I like to know the practical steps to any situation and the rules I should be following. So I read all the signs at parks, at museums. Yep. I like to read all the things, know exactly what's expected of me.
Whenever we go into an RV park, you grab the paperwork that they give you, and you're like,
I sit down and I read all of it. I want to know all the things.
Back, upside, downside. And I'm like, does it have the Wi-Fi password on there somewhere?
Yes, it does. I just read that. So I'm able to help you in that situation.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
But I think you stretch me in that a little bit. So you, now within reason, you do stretch me with kind of risk taking and spontaneity, I think. So sometimes you kind of like, well, let's do this. And it's not something that I would have necessarily chosen to do.
But you like the new experiences.
But I love the new experiences.
Yeah,
so I would say also you stretch me when it comes to food. I grew up on Hamburger Helper and meat and beans and macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
Just very basic food. And when I met you, you introduced me to
Indian food,
a whole different world of food. So
just lots of different stuff that actually I missed when I moved to West Texas. The options for going out to eat were somewhat limited.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would kind of be like how I miss Mexican food here in Iowa.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's really different. So but I mean, and we've had the opportunity to experience many new foods together since our travels and all of that along the way. So. And we both like to talk. I'm sure no one could tell that. But you can be an oversharer with outside sources.
Yes, I can.
I tend to be very private about things that I deem personal.
Yes.
But
I can make things very awkward in a hurry.
Yeah. But you've also gotten better about running things past me instead of just dropping every last detail to whomever you're talking to at the time.
Right.
So
we and afterwards. Post a conversation with someone else where maybe I have overshared a little bit. You're like, okay, this is why we talked beforehand. All that said, what would be your best marriage advice to someone who is about to get married?
That's a big question. If I were to give my best advice to a newlywed couple or a couple seeking to improve their marriage relationship, it would be to pursue a God-centered marriage first. Communicate well.
Yes.
Understand each other's love languages. Be willing to step out of your box on occasion. Date your spouse, and always give more than you take. A healthy marriage takes work and effort from both parties. Anything you would add to that?
So for newlyweds, people coming up to get
Yeah.
married, or maybe, maybe someone who has already just got married. Your thoughts that you would not share with anyone else, your personal thoughts, like the things the questions that pop up in your head as you're spending time with your future spouse, the doubts that you have, those things that you're kind of like suppressing, and maybe even you're balancing against some all the good things you like about your partner. And so you're kind of like pushing them in the background somewhere.
Yeah.
Just know that they're all going to come out eventually in the middle of your marriage, and usually at a time when you're your most vulnerable. You're not at your best. You've been caught off guard. So you're not going to act well. And so you're going to end up with a mess that you have to clean up rather than dealing with those thoughts, questions, doubts up front.
Right.
So take the time, kind of a little bit like us with having kids. That was something that I kept pushing off as something that wasn't important to talk about right there and then, but was very important to you.
Do you think you suppressed that because you didn't want to ruin the happy that we had?
I could sense that we had a differing opinion. And it wasn't like I was unwilling to shift from my opinion. I think that probably if we had have talked a little more about it, then I would have come to a position of compromise in some way.
Yeah.
Compromise sounds like a bad word. It wasn't that, but we could have talked about it.
We could have talked about it.
And instead of like reaching a point where it was more of a like, what do we do now? While we were more relaxed, we could have had an open conversation.
Yeah.
And it would have been there would have been less stress on it, less pressure on it.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better. But yeah, I was concerned that because I sensed there was a difference of opinion, I was concerned that I would mess up our relationship, which is an overreaction.
Little dramatic.
Oh, gosh. There we go again. So I would give advice to people coming up to getting married, people that have just been married for a very short period of time, all of those things that you've got saved up that you feel like you can't say because you're just going to, like, what's the point? It's just going to ruin things. I'll just keep it to myself. It's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And it will be a big deal one day, and it will come up at just the wrong time, and you will not be prepared for it.
Yeah.
So get those things out in the open now.
Yeah. It's good advice.
And for those who are already married, been married a long time, I would say it's never too late to learn your partner's love language, to learn those personality traits that they have and lean into them.
Yeah.
Use it as an opportunity to correct a few things. You might not have to do things like totally differently,
Right.
but to tweak your behavior just a little bit in order to speak into your partner's love language, to speak in a way that doesn't bring out the stress side of their personality, but helps them to get along the path to feeling a little more integrated.
Yeah.
Understand them as best you can. Like I try now to understand you. I actually really enjoy those moments that we've had after we did those tests to find something new about you. I never knew that about you before.
And isn't it interesting that after 22 years, like we're still discovering new things about each other? That just blows my mind.
So it's all about trying to figure out how to shift your partner's needle in the direction of growth rather than stress.
Yeah.
And it's going to feel forced at first. It's going to feel like, homework you got from your teacher in school or something like that. But if you learn to give and take in a healthy way, it's just going to start becoming a natural part of your life together.
Absolutely.
I know we have a range of listeners of all ages, from the teenager who can't even imagine being married yet,
Yeah.
to the retired married couples who've been married longer than we've been alive.
Yes. And teenagers, put this one in your pocket for the future.
Yes, I think there is a beautiful view in this episode for anyone, regardless of your stage in life.
Absolutely. So start with taking a love language assessment, both you and your partner, if you've never done one before. We'll drop the link to a free assessment in our show notes. Once you recognize what makes you feel the most loved, you can communicate those things to the ones closest to you.
Mm-hmm.
Parents, this is also a really great exercise for you to do with your kids and teens as well. As a wife and a mom, I want to know how to love all of my people to the absolute best of my ability.
In 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 7, it says, "Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance."
May we all strive to have that kind of beautiful love in our relationships and marriages.
Thank you for listening today. So what are we going to talk about next time?
Well, in our next episode, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of full-time RV lifestyle.
That's great. That's going to be an interesting episode.
It will. We get a lot of questions about our time of living full-time on the road. And I know we had a lot of people during that time living vicariously through us as we journeyed through the country in our RV. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of you will really find this one interesting.
If you know of someone who would enjoy this podcast, please point them in our direction. Visit us at Beautiful View Podcast on Facebook or Instagram, share our posts, or share the link to our podcast. Also, now you can watch a video recording of our podcast on YouTube.
You lucky dogs.
The link to that is in our show notes.
Yeah, we'll throw in a picture or two so you can actually see what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So also, we would really appreciate it if you would follow, subscribe to, or leave a review for us on either YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform. These things are completely free for you to do, but it helps push the Beautiful View podcast up a little further in the algorithm so more people find us.
Yes. Thank you to the Hopeful Few for providing the music for our podcast. You can check out more of their music on Spotify or Apple Music. The links are in our show notes.
If you have any questions you would like us to answer or suggestions for things you would like us to talk about in our future podcast episodes, just email us at beautifulviewpod@gmail.com.
And just a reminder, please consider joining the Beautiful View Patreon. This helps us keep the episodes coming and cover our costs. Again, the link is in our show notes and it's also on our social media accounts.
We hope you have a great day. And always remember to look for opportunities in life to see a beautiful view.
Happy anniversary.
We could climb a mighty mountain, float on down a winding river, travel back in time and face our future too. Oh, I'm not scared of where I'm going, 'cause I know whose hands I'm holding. Oh, I'd go anywhere as long as you're going to. And I'd go anywhere as long as I'm with you. Yeah, I'd go